Hello, my name is Bruno Wattenberg. I'm Senior Advisor at EY Belgium, and I'm also Professor of Strategy. Let's take 5 minutes to talk about pay transparency gap. You may heard we have a directive, and most of the employers are considering it's just about collecting data. It's not the real challenge. The real challenge is based on those data, being able to explain it and eventually use those data in order to organize differently the pay system. Adeline Sore, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
You are our expert in pay transparency gaps. Thank you for being with us. First questions, what today is the real challenge of pay transparency gap for employer, organization, enterprises?
Well, it sounds simple. It's about transparency and it's about equal pay. But what we see in reality is that it's actually not that simple, because organizations, they cannot explain sometimes why there are differences between employees. Well, we see different reasons. One of the reasons indeed is historically that pay structures have evolved over time, but also we see that data is fragmented within the whole organization, stored in different locations, etc. But we also see, for example, that policies are not always applied consistently within the organization.
So the EU directive is not transposed in Belgian law, so a lot of organizations, a lot of HR might think they can wait. What is the risk if they're not acting now?
The risk itself is actually when the transparency will become visible, because employees will start asking questions. And there it's really, what if employers cannot explain the differences that there might be, answers that really make sense, answers that have a clear explanation. So the risk that we see is not really the gap itself, but not being able to explain the gap.
So in fact, the biggest risk is losing control of the narrative. So what would you advise, to be really proactive instead of reactive?
That's exactly what we actually advise our clients, Bruno. So, well, it's harder to fix things afterwards than to start today. And so that's why as well we want to advise organizations to see this as an opportunity to, where there is a lack of structure, to actually build that structure and that strong foundation that is needed for the organization to really be able to explain the transparency.
Okay, let's assume that I understood the importance. I'm an HR, I talk to my board and I decide to act. What is the very first step? What is the starting day of the journey?
Usually what we do is that we really try to engage companies to see this as a journey, not a one-off exercise. We advise them to start with key 3 steps. The first step is to really look at the situation today. Where do they stand today? Then secondly, to really start building that strong foundation, build a clear and consistent job and pay framework. And then thirdly, think about the communication, think about the strategy, and think about how you will really explain the current transparency within your organization.
And if I follow you, this communication can not be improvised?
Preferably not, indeed. There needs to be a strong plan and a strong communication behind it.
Listening to you, it's way beyond HR. It's not only concerning HR, it's concerning CXOs, eventually board of directors.
Of course, it's really impacting multiple people, multiple stakeholders within the company. For example, as well, line managers, finance departments, as you mentioned. So it's very important to also involve them as from the start, so that they can really think as well on the communication, the strategy and the plan, because it's about transparency, it's about pay. So it's very important that if we talk about this fairness, that we have everyone on board, but also that the fairness as well, it's really important how it's perceived and experienced within the whole company, so that each and every stakeholder is on the same level.
So Adeline, you see a lot of CHRO, you talk to many employers. From your point of view today, what is the greatest misconception they have about this EU directive on transparency?
For what we see, the biggest misconception that there is about the directive is that it's only about reporting. But it's not just about reporting. The reporting is one of the end results to be compliant. But in the end, it's also about really building that strong foundation, to think about the pay structure, to think about what is happening.
Adeline, what happens if the enterprise get this wrong?
Well, if it goes wrong, it really impacts the trust and the engagement of the employees. Not just the current employees, but also the future employees, how to attract and to retain them. And pay remains one of the most sensitive topics within an organization, it's really important that if they see differences, they really need to be able to explain the differences based on objective criteria.
Thank you, Adeline. Pay transparency is arriving. We don't know precisely when, but it's time to act. It's time to act because the challenge is not only collecting the data, it's being able to explain those data, because if you're not able to explain it, somebody else will do it for you. And last thing is to, based on those data, to be able to adapt your pay structures. Thank you very much.